Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think few debates in this House have ever had such an impact on the people of Liverpool Wavertree and the country as the one that we are conducting today and this week. Every home, every business, every citizen in Liverpool will feel the impact of Brexit. The stakes in terms of jobs, the prices of our goods, wages, the cost of mortgages, businesses large and small, our economy, our standing in the world could not be any higher. And it's hard to see what has changed since the Prime Minister delayed the meaningful vote, I believe in such a discourteous fashion before the Christmas recess. The only tangible change is that the hands of the clock have moved ever closer to the Brexit deadline, with the Prime Minister presenting her false choice of her deal or no deal. Mr. Speaker, she should tread carefully. There are those who wish to see Britain crash out of the EU without a deal in place, as the final act in their anti-EU drama. But no responsible government should even be entertaining the prospect of a no-deal Brexit. And it's beyond reproach that this option has not been ruled out. The uncertainty that it creates and is creating across our country, the billions being spent planning for this possibility. We should be crystal clear what a no-deal Brexit would mean for our constituents in the country. Well, it will mean for our food prices, where 30% of our food comes from the European Union, where our gas and electricity prices will increase disproportionately, impacting on the poorest and most vulnerable, as around 5% of our electricity and as much as 12% of our gas is imported from the EU. With no alternatives currently in place, our constituents will no longer be covered by the European health insurance card and will need to pay for health when they go abroad. The manufacturing sector, which I represent in my constituency, will be hard hit, with firms relying on just-in-time production, unable to properly guarantee their production. And as I've heard from so many constituents like Rob, the owner of a small chemicals business, who would struggle to source raw materials or maintain the same level of sales. He is an employer, and there are many of my constituents who rely on jobs from his firm. But worst of all, our public services, including our National Health Service and social care, will suffer as we are unable to properly recruit from countries within the EU. We've heard at the Health and Social Care Select Committee that there's a real threat to our medical supplies. The Permanent Secretary told us that he was having sleepless nights over the continuation of imports of vital medical supplies and told us how complex the issue is. In Liverpool, we are very proud of our universities, and we have welcomed students and academics from across the EU. Our university leaders tell us that crashing out of the EU is one of the biggest threats to our higher education sector. The Russell Group reports only just last week that the postgraduate student enrolment from EU countries has already fallen by 9% this academic year, starving our universities of cash, and more than 100 universities have warned of an academic, cultural and scientific setback from which it would take decades to recover, because a no-deal Brexit would isolate and hobble Britain's universities. Mr. Speaker, these are the things that we can predict with confidence, but the real threat comes from those unintended consequences, the 1,001 things that will have a negative impact on the lives of our nation's citizens, which we cannot foresee. And the bottom line is that things will be worse for the majority of the people we represent. That is the reality we are contemplating in this debate. Our politics is broken, our system has failed, and neither the option of the Prime Minister's deal or the no-deal scenario has a majority of support from this House. We see our Parliament in a state of gridlock, and how can we break this gridlock? Now, the Prime Minister could draw a magical rabbit from the hat, a political masterstroke of some kind which breaks the logjam and enables Parliament to move ahead beyond the current paralysis. And whilst we live in hope, I think the chances of that happening appear incredibly slim. Because let me be clear that the opposition to the Prime Minister's deal is about more than the backstop on the Northern Ireland border, critical though that issue is. And I'm grateful to my colleague, the Honourable Member for Hove and Portslade, who did an analysis of the debate that was abruptly brought to a close before Christmas, and he found that members from across this House had many concerns and issues. They were around security, migration, citizens' rights. Number one was trade and the economy. And actually, the issue of the backstop, which we are told this whole debate rests on, came forth. I'll give way to
I'm extremely grateful to my friend. Can I say to her, as somebody who was involved in negotiating the Good Friday Agreement, I regard the backstop as actually an essential guarantee of the Good Friday Agreement and the long-term stability in Ireland. So from my point of view, although I disagree with the government's position for the reasons she's setting out, the backstop is not the problem. The problem is the other things and the future framework.
Luciana, Berger.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for very clearly articulating where the nub of this issue has rested on this point, but actually there are so many other issues, and actually for many colleagues on both sides of the House, this is not the issue that is consuming them. And in fact, we heard just in the Telegraph this morning that it was an unnamed minister who said that the Prime Minister is likely to lose next week by 200 because this issue is not going to be resolved by just addressing the backstop alone. So I believe if that vote falls next Tuesday, a vote of no confidence in this government should be brought immediately, and we should see if there is a majority in this Parliament for a general election. Because with less than 80 days to go until we are due to leave, and around 40 sitting days left, time is pressing on. Now, if that vote falls, my view is that we are only going to break the gridlock by giving the country a final say with a people's vote. And this is not a rerun of the 2016 referendum. The world is a different place. We're nearly 3 years on. We've got 1.4 million young people who are eligible to vote today who were too young to have their say in 2016. Now, the most recent analysis shows that in my constituency, 72.5% of my constituents support remaining now in the European Union, with 74% of people wanting to have that people's vote. Now, that's hardly surprising. Liverpool is proudly a European city. In 2008, we were the European City of Culture, a year that generated an economic impact of £753 million. And in just the last 5 years alone, the European Structural and Investment Funds have provided Liverpool with nearly £200 million, which has allowed us to invest in hundreds of local enterprises and jobs. People understand the enormous benefits that EU membership has affording us dating back decades, and it's regrettable that the government won't even confirm that funds which have already been committed by the European Union for Liverpool to the tune of millions of pounds would be guaranteed post-Brexit. Now, surely young people, above all, whose lives will be most affected by the decisions taken in this place, should be allowed a say on their future. New facts have come to light. The lies of the Leave campaign have been exposed, including, as the House just heard from the Home Secretary before, people who received those leaflets and who were bombarded with Facebook advertising telling them that millions of people from Turkey would come here. It just wasn't true. We've heard of the very, very strong suggestions of Russian influence in our referendum, in line with their desire to disrupt and weaken their Western allies, and it's deplorable that we haven't yet seen a full and proper criminal interrogation of that issue. Now, rather than unicorns and rainbows, too many of the public were sold, we now have a much clearer sense of what Brexit actually means for our economy, for jobs, for our public services, for businesses. And public opinion has shifted based on the harsh realities rather than the false, shiny promises on the side of a bus or threats of a Turkish invasion. So let the people have a say with a people's vote. Let's be open and honest with the country. There is no better Brexit. There isn't a Brexit dividend, just Brexit chaos and misery. There isn't a better deal than the one we have already. On every analysis, the government receipts will be lower than if we had remained in the European Union. And of course we can choose to spend the money in a different way, but that is not a dividend. The decision is going to affect us for decades to come, and it is in the national interest and for the sake of the people of Liverpool Wavertree who send me to this Parliament that I will vote against the government's motion next week.